Okay, so this is Dr. Hunter Frame with Virginia Tech. We're back out in the cotton field this morning and I'm taking some video. This is our planting date by seeding rate by variety trial. So we have 4 planting dates and we're revisiting this study today because I wanted to talk not about the overall study, but about PICS management and how you would manage PICS differently, especially in a year like this year. So we have planting dates from May 4th all the way to about June 2nd, evenly spaced as we can across that month time frame. And so we have cotton planted June 2nd, June 3rd out here, but because of the different planting dates, because of the soil moisture, the stress that these plants are undergoing now. As you see, this is cotton. This cotton here, this is the first 2 planting dates. So we have 4 seeding rates, and we're actually right here looking at the first planting date. Right next to it here, we're looking at the second planting date, which is around the 13th or 14th of May. So right when some of the Virginia cotton was first starting to go in the ground, given the adverse planting conditions. You can see we're not quite to row closure even on these earlier planting dates. But what you are gonna really notice when we come across the field, when we go from the second to the third planting date, third and fourth planting dates, is the color of this cotton. So don't know if that's translating in video, but in person, the first and second planting dates where we have put PICS on the study. So we've PICSed it 12 ounces around first square, and we made that decision based on the soil moisture that was available at that time. Whereas the third and fourth planting dates, the soil moisture started to become limiting, and we decided not to PICS this cotton. And we decided that because during dry periods, we know we're probably going to get some fruit shedding going on as that plant copes with stress and wilts during the day. However, we want to limit that stress. And PICS slows down the growth of the plant, slowing down cell expansion and limiting the growth. So under good conditions, that plant's trying to grow vigorously. Under stress conditions, when you put PICS on, you're stressing that plant. It's trying to grow as much as it can under the environmental conditions, but it also is trying to limit stress. So one thing during drought stress we want to do is limit any other stress that we may put on that plant. And part of that is limiting and adjusting your PICS strategy. So since then, we have not PICSed any cotton on the station because of the dry weather. Dry weather is gonna be a growth inhibitor on the plant anyway. This cotton is fairly tall. It's in the third planting date. Is just starting to bloom. That's what we're in now. If you look back towards the second planting date. But again, I really stress the importance during dry periods, take into account your soil moisture. So if you have a farm that maybe had an inch or so on that farm within a week, that may be a situation where you could PICS and you're a week away from that inch of rain. Your soil moisture is going to dictate what's available to that plant, what that plant is seeing, and how stressed that plant is. But if you're on a farm that has sandy soils, it's been a week and a half, 2 weeks, and you haven't gotten a rainfall event, and that cotton is starting to wilt, and you start to see some of that moisture stress, I would caution against applying PICS and limiting the amount of stress on that plant. That's what is going to maximize that fruit retention. One good thing about cotton is it is more drought tolerant than corn or soybeans, and so it's a tropical plant. It's used to heat, and we can sustain a little bit more drought than we can some of our other crops. However, we can do things to limit the amount of stress. And we have not PICSed, so we're probably in the second, third week of bloom, and we'll walk down to one of these earlier planting dates, and you can see this. We're in the fourth planting date right here. This was planted in June. Not blooming yet, but we have not applied any PICS. There's 8 different varieties in here, so if you look, you see the growth habit of some of these varieties are a little bit different. This is a heavier field. It holds a little bit more moisture, so we're probably in a better situation in this particular field than in a sandier field, and so we need to take that into account. here's the borderline, hit the line again between an earlier planting date and a later planting date. This is actually we planted this May 4th. If you get in here, we're starting to see some of the blooms come up the plant, and this is a good plant right here to look at. You see the white bloom, it's starting to come up. So right now on this plant, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nodes to about what I would consider is going to be a harvestable square right now. So we're 5 nodes to the growing point from that white flower on that plant. And so we're looking for some rain because a lot of cotton around this area is starting to bloom in the top of that plant. And that's not a good thing, it's going to depend on what varieties out there, but it's also going to depend on how that plant shuts down moving forward. We could get into a situation if we get rain and the cotton starts to take off again. We're in a situation where we have a crop at the bottom part of the plant that is mature, and we have a substantial portion of the crop that was set much later due to limited rainfall, and that's going to pose problems moving into the fall in terms of defoliation strategy and what we do in order to maximize yield. Do we wait on that top crop? How much is there versus do we go ahead and defoliate based on that bottom crop? And I'm thinking this year we're gonna see some of that issues again. Now we're getting into another later planting date here, but you can see this earlier planting date, lower populations, we have some stand issues, but that's another management discussion for planting in adverse conditions. But again, PIX management, we really want to avoid PIXing cotton when we're in drought situations. And I would say southeastern Virginia, most of us are in a drought situation. There have been pockets that have been getting rainfall, and if you've been getting rainfall, go ahead and manage that PIX situation as that cotton calls for. Again, when we manage PIX, you come in, we're going to look at this, try to look at this plant right here, and this would be the first quarter size leaf that I'm touching. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then 4. This is the 4th internode where my pointer finger is, if everybody can see that. And we want to look at that internode spacing between my thumb and forefinger right there, above and below that internode. So look down. So we got about 1.5 to 2 inch spacing there. We use 2.5 inches in our recommendation. If that internode spacing is above 2.5 inches, and depending on the stage of crop growth, we're going to determine if that plant needs PIX at certain growth stages. That's recommendations that were developed by Keith Edmondson and Joel Faircloth years ago, but it really works. Certain varieties got different growth habits. 2 inches is right on the borderline, even though this cotton is dry. And again, it's dry, so it's slowing down that internode spacing. That variety, if you can look, you see it's more what we call like chicken neck on the top versus the variety right next to it. Same PIX regime, it's more rounded, got a more rounded shape. So it's going to depend on the variety. If we come in here and look at this variety and look at what's going on here, right here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Bend that plant over. Again, right here between my pointer and index finger is the internode spacing. And again, right there between my pointer and index finger. So again, that's about 1.5 inches. We don't need PIX. And of course, we don't need PIX now because it's dry, but even in a good situation, we would probably hold off maybe PIXing this cotton until that internode spacing, we see some more elongation right now. But the primary goal of PIX during dry weather, or PIX management during dry weather, not PIX, but the primary goal of PIX management during dry weather is not to adversely stress that plant, because you can shut that plant down totally and end up with a stunted cotton plant, limiting the number of nodes that plant's going to put on. Because once it rains, we still want the plant to have conditions to take off growing. With that, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Again, this is a management test where we're looking at different planting dates, different populations, and then we're managing it different based off of what the crop needs. And I hope that's what a farmer would do with your own cotton. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out by email or call me via cell. Thank you.